Happy weekend, everybody. We're officially getting into some NFL games this evening, kicking off Thursday Night Football with Tampa Bay taking on the Baltimore Ravens. So that means we've got our tiers episodes for this week. This time around, in this particular video, you'll be seeing my top 30 running back tiers and rankings here for this week's games. I'm super pumped to dive into this stuff with you guys and all that and more. So if you're new around here, make sure to drop on down, smash the subscribe button, turn the bell on as well. You'll be notified every time I post a new piece of content, which happens multiple times a day here throughout the week. So stay tuned for all that stuff. Let's dive into today's video and talk some football. All right, you guys, here you go. Not that you care either. I just had this shocking revelation, though. I figured I would share it with you guys. So I pulled my microphone and my laptop away from my camera and distanced myself from it a little bit. 100 times more comfortable. Highly recommend if you guys ever find yourself in a situation where you're talking into a camera. It's taking me this long to figure that much out. So as we always do here for today, I'll be breaking down my tiers, the categories, if you will, for the beginning of this episode. It'll take me about 30 seconds here. So if you don't care about this, just skip to the part where we get to the elite running back ones tier. But essentially, those are the best of the best players. Those are the guys you want in your lineups the most, the players that have the biggest chance of making that vital week-winning, impact on your teams. Strong running back ones, guys, I'm very confident finish within the top 12 range here. That is our classification, for a running back one. And then bubble running backs, guys that could go either way. And if things go well, they're in that top 12 group. If things that we'll talk about here don't, they slide on down into the 13 through 24 range. Rinse and repeat for the same numeric values just associated with RB2. So 13 through 24 is the RB2s, and then 25 plus will be your RB3s for a given week. So that is our tiers. Let's dive into the elite category here. All right, here we go. So 4 names in the elite running back ones tier for this week. Remember, left to right is how you can associate those numeric values. I will give you guys an update of where we're at each tier checkpoint. So Saquon Barkley, to kick things off here, coming off a game in which he had 25 touches for $135, his third 100-plus yard rushing performance of the season. And he had an 80% snap share in every single game to this point in the season except for one contest. So you're getting absolute workhorse numbers out of Barkley here. He's got the Seahawks this week, and what honestly might be kind of the Fox afternoon slate of the day here. You've got all these other teams squaring off that necessarily are not 500 teams even. So the Rams 49ers, I think, is the game of the week, but both of those teams are sub 500. So who would have thought the Seattle Seahawks and the Giants would be the teams to watch here, and that Saquon Barkley would be our running back one heading into this point in the year. But it looks like that trend's going to continue, so we have to give him his respect and put him up here where it is due. Derrick Henry against Houston this week. Derrick Henry, oddly enough, is coming off of having his best snap count percentage of this season. That number shocked me at just 75%, and he's had his third straight 100-yard rushing performance looking back to Week 7 in that 3-game window prior to that point, or the 2 games prior to that third game there in Week 7. So for him, we know he's a workhorse. We know he's the focal point of this Tennessee offense, and that, of course, is the most important function there. He's going to see the rock on a high-volume basis every week. Nick Chubb here, giving him the benefit of the doubt. He had kind of a down week in Week 6, bounces back in Week 7, and that's really my expectation for Nick Chubb. The lows are not ever going to be super low for him here, and we can always depend on that really nice floor value, and that's something that, came back for us this past week. 17 points is actually better than a floor value, of course, and just the fact that he's able to go out there every week, be so efficient. He had over 100 yards from scrimmage against Baltimore, so this week against Cincinnati, the only thing that I can see really being a detriment to what Nick Chubb can do is game script. And we've seen him overcome it time and time again this year. The one occurrence where that wasn't the case, again, was Week 6 against New England, where they just got curb stomped. So as long as Cleveland is in this game, it's a Monday Night Football contest, so I'm sure a lot of you will be riding on Nick Chubb to get your wins this week. If that's the case, you're looking golden here. And again, the only thing I think that stops him could be if that game gets out of hand with how high-powered Cincinnati's offensive attack has been as of late, but not something that's really keeping me up late at night. And then Jonathan Taylor here. JT's got Washington this week. The weird dynamic and reason that if you wanted to argue with me that he could be in the strong running back ones tier as opposed to the elite category, and really his production has not been elite here, I'm just continuing to give him the benefit of the doubt because I think that he deserves it. I think that his usage on a weekly basis when healthy alludes to that. It was his first game back after suffering the ankle injury this past week. So what we do know about JT is he's no longer the running back one for this season. That's kind of what we anticipated heading into the year. And now you've got a quarterback change against this Commanders defense. So there's two, threads of thought here. A, he gets more touches. They're going to lean on him early to hopefully get Sam Ehlinger put in a positive situation throughout the 4 quarters of that contest. Or B, maybe you think the offense will be a total meltdown and disaster. So I'm somewhere in between. I don't think it's going to be the best game JT's had this season. That to this point is week 1 still, unfortunately. But I also am very confident and comfortable. I merged those two words there in what he should be able to do for this offense this week against the Commanders team that has been a little inconsistent and streaky on defense in both phases of their rushing and passing defense. They've been hit or miss at times in both phases. They've been a bit better against the rush than the pass, though. So, let's dive into our strong running back ones tier. All right, you guys, before we dive into our next tier, I've got some super exciting news. So I'm going to be partnering with my friends at Ultra Game for our first giveaway of the season here. The rules are simple. I'm today wearing the NFL Men's Active Lightweight long sleeve shirt, and in this video you're going to have the opportunity to win a very similar product here from my friends at Ultra Game. In the comment section of today's episode, I have pinned a link to my Instagram page where you can find the contest entry details. It's incredibly simple. Follow myself and Ultra Game on Instagram, and on the comment section of my post, let me know your favorite NFL team here, and you can get yourself hooked up with access to a shirt just like this one, absolutely for free, for taking part in today's giveaway. So again, Ultra Game, super big thanks to them. This long sleeve t-shirt is phenomenal. It's super comfortable. I love the fit, and above all else, you get to rock some awesome pro sports teams. They've got the NBA and the NFL on there, so make sure you go check them out. There's links in the description of today's episode, as well as, again, of course, take advantage of the free giveaway here. It's only lasting until Friday, so get on top of that, and I will see you guys there. One more time, you guys, check out Ultra Game and our giveaway for this week in the community post section of the channel here or on my Instagram page. I'm actually rocking the shirt right now, celebrating the Giants. I'm not a Giants fan. But of course, hopping on the bandwagon a little bit. Do I think they're winning the Super Bowl? No, but they're a super fun team. So go get yourself entered in to get that giveaway today. And let's dive back into today's episode. So first and foremost here, yes, I do not live under a rock. I know that Christian McCaffrey is a member of the San Francisco 49ers. I looked and I looked and I looked some more, and I even tried to, crop some photoshopped pictures of him, and I just can't get a headshot of CMC in a San Francisco jersey yet. So my goal is to make that happen for next week. This week, he still is in the Carolina blue here. I'm sorry. Into the analysis now. So he's our 5th running back for this week, taking on the LA Rams. What I think you'll see in this matchup is an increased level of usage in terms of just raw snap count percentage. His number was pretty low at 28% last week, and that's okay. I think that that's kind of to be expected. He learned the playbook on his flight from Carolina to Santa Clara, and I honestly was surprised to see him play. So that was reflected in his usage. Now, when he was on the field, he was touching the ball and being a pretty dang good player. But for me against the Rams this week, I love the physicality that San Francisco brings to this matchup every single time. They're always a mismatch for the Rams. Even off a bye here, I think this is still a good spot for McCaffrey. Even if he doesn't hit his ceiling for overall snap count percentage in his second game as a 49er, I still think he has, just based on his overall talent and his skill set being so immune to game script, the chance to be a really big-time player in this week's matchups. Dalvin Cook taking on the Arizona Cardinals for this week. Now, he came off of week 6, so he's actually coming off of a bye here. So he goes, his last game played, week 6, had a season-high 87% snap share, but then I was kind of puzzled. I scratched my head a little bit. He had just 14 opportunities in that game. So that's kind of been the love-hate relationship with Dalvin Cook. It's been really erratic differences in usage in numbers, whether he's super efficient or not very efficient, scoring touchdowns, struggling to find the end zone. Like, there always seems to be just a function of consistency missing from his outlook this season that gives me some pause with him. But this week, I will give him his respect here. I'll put him in this category. Alvin Kamara rushed for over 4.5 yards per carry last week against this Cardinals defense. The Vikings are coming off a bye here. The Cardinals are coming off of a long extended week playing on Thursday night last week. So I think at the end of the day, this bodes well for both groups in terms of rest and recovery. So hopefully they can get him out there, get him his 20 or so touches, have efficient play, and produce lineup numbers for us. Josh Jacobs here taking on the Saints. Now, this is still a team that is technically top 10 against the run, or they were actually. I should relook at that number after what Eno Benjamin and company did to them. But they were heading into that matchup on a short week, a top 10 unit against fantasy running backs. Now, For Josh Jacobs, he has been hot here. He has been absolutely killing it for teams, probably winning weeks for a lot of lineups here. And he has actually averaged 5 yards per carry or better from week 3 on this season. So his numbers have been fantastic. He's been doing awesome things for us. 3 straight 20-plus point games for us in our lineups. 2 of those were 30-plus point games. So cannot argue with the production here. If they keep turning and handing him the rock, he is running like a madman back there. And then Ken Walker here, a player I love, taking on the Giants this week. It is a relatively stingy matchup on paper. However, he has absolutely killed it. 23 or more touches in his first 2 starts of his NFL career. He's looking like a really, really dang good player here, and his efficiency has been solid as well, which is something that, I honestly didn't know based on how Rashad Penny started this season for this team, with their pass blocking being pretty good, with their run blocking being a bit shaky. How would Walker step in and do? And immediately, he's gotten the work, he's gotten the love from this offensive staff, and he's producing legit numbers. All right, into the bubble running back ones tier here. So this is our largest group yet, 5 players. AK starts us off here for this category. As I said earlier, 4.45 yards per carry against the Cardinals last week. Coming off of a long week of rest, this week they have the Raiders. I think that this is a matchup where I feel kind of neutral about the game script situation. I think both of these are flawed offensive and defensive football teams, but I do love the usage that Alvin Kamara's had as of late. So if we take a look at him, he's had 24 total targets, 8 per game in his last 3 contests out here. Now, part of that is Andy Dalton's been the quarterback. We're still a little bit shaky and unsure of who's going to be this week, but I do think that Kamara is one of the more reliable pieces in this offense right now, and he's certainly, surprisingly, after the way he started the season, one of the healthier names and options for this team. So Alvin Kamara, giving him the trust here, but also acknowledging that this could go a couple of different ways here this week. All right, diving into Joe Mixon now. So this is a player that is in this tier because A, he just hasn't consistently posted an elite fantasy ceiling, and B, because his floor has been pretty solid. So you're seeing a guy that's getting red zone opportunities because of the output offensively of this Bengals football team, but I think there's still a little bit more to be desired. So I feel comfortable with him as a starter. I think there's a lot of unwarranted panic with him and Leonard Fournette going on right now. We'll talk about him in a second. But this is a guy coming off of a 20-touch game, 91 yards, but he's only had 2 games over 5 yards per carry, so efficiency has been a problem for him this season, and he's having to make up for that in his red zone work in other phases of the game. This week, again, they do have the Cleveland Browns on Monday Night Football. Dameon Pierce taking on the Tennessee Titans this week, a division matchup. Look, coming off of a bye, or excuse me, they're not coming off of a bye week. They are 1 week removed from their bye. Pierce continues to put up solid numbers. Is he the highest ceiling asset in the world? No. But is this a guy who gives you a really dang good floor every week and could get you close to 20 points? Of course. And that's really what we're banking on here. As long as Houston can get 3 solid quarters of running the ball, they're going to get him close to 20 touches, and he's a good enough running back, and he plays feisty football, doesn't go down easy. He'll get you there. He stays clean. He stays, in terms of his health is what that refers to, not PED use, and he stays upright and turns those legs. So I like what we're seeing so far. If we can continue getting more of this, he'll be in the conversation as a top 12 borderline running back every week, and we'll keep on taking that value going forward. Next up here, diving into Leonard Fournette. So Fournette's got Baltimore tonight. If you're watching this on Thursday when I'm posting this episode, I don't love the short turnaround for this team. This is an offense that I think is kind of in turmoil right now. I kind of hate to see them have to turn around and play this game right away, but for this offense, really the key for Fournette is high volume receiving. And Lenny didn't get that last week. He only had 3 opportunities to catch the football. That's the reason that pass catching, he's the PPR RB6 right now. He's really not being a great running back. And someone said this in the comment section in a previous episode this week. I 100% agreed. He has been a guy that's just hogged up pass catching volume, which has produced fantasy points. He has scored touchdowns here and there. And he's been a guy that has just done the things and checked the boxes that you need to do to be a good fantasy football running back, but he's not really contributing in a super positive manner because overall this offense is just really struggling and sputtering right now. So again, not the biggest fan of seeing this team have to play a short game or a short week against Baltimore this week. I think it could go either very good or very bad here. That's why he's in the bubble territory. In to Travis Etienne now, who I am pumped to see play football this week. His first game as the true unquestioned workhorse in this offense. Now, I said this earlier this week as well. His workhorse scenario looks a little bit different than most running backs. And you can argue with me that last week was his first time to do that. But last week we still had J-Rob back there. We didn't know yet he was going to be traded. This situation going in changes everything. We thought we might want to start Travis Etienne last week. We know we want to start Travis Etienne this week's games. He could easily be a top 12 player. He could maybe even get himself into the top 5 or 6 if he has a super big boom performance. But this is a unique circumstance where you've got a overseas game in England this week, so you're going to see Travis Etienne taking on Denver. It's supposed to be a home game for Jacksonville, but we all know how those things go. And then essentially, this is like, I wrote this down, it is his V2.0 breakout game. So 80% snap share last week with J-Rob on the field, and seeing no touches. This week, it's Travis Etienne and JaMychal Hasty, so a pretty precipitous drop-off there, looking for him to have some big numbers this week. All right, we've got ourselves a small tier here for the Elite RB2s, just Ramondre Stevenson and Aaron Jones. So the reason that Ramondre is no longer in the top 12 for me is that last week was encouraging, seeing Damian Harris in his first game back get so little opportunity and usage here. But I do think that this week that role grows a little bit. I still think this is Stevenson's backfield to own. I think he's still the most valuable Patriots running back on that football team. But I do think it impacts the relative effectiveness and overall usage rate that he gets. Maybe some of those red zone opportunities get plucked away from him, whatever the case might be. And another thing I don't love here is that he kind of, went behind Bill Belichick's back at the podium and said he wasn't aware of their little quarterback carousel last week, which if I know something about Bill Belichick, it is that he is a pretty petty individual. And I don't mean to say he holds resentment against his players, but hopefully that does not impact Stevenson's playtime this week. That would really suck to see that impact the rest of our fantasy seasons. Like, I'm like half kidding right now, but like I'm also relatively serious. I hope you guys are picking up on these messages correctly. But like this literally could be a thing here where Bill is just like, all right, screw you, Ramondre. Like, make me look dumb in front of the media. So we'll see what happens here. I think he's a better player. I think he's a more versatile back. They have the Jets this week, which have been a good defense. There's just a few elements and weird dynamics here that really have me a bit puzzled with what to do with Ramondre here for this week. I definitely would not feel comfortable with him in my top 12 here. He is very close, though, at my running back 14. Aaron Jones at the 15 spot for this week, taking on Buffalo in Buffalo. A brutal matchup for a team in crisis right now in the Green Bay Packers, which I'm actually a fan of. So that's my team. I'm not a fan of them being in crisis. So I went and looked at Aaron Jones' last 2 games out here, and I've seen a very troubling lower than 3 yards per carry count. He had 2.88 yards per carry this week against Washington. That is miserable. Really, all of his production came from the receiving game. He had 10 targets, 9 receptions, 53 yards. Honestly, that efficiency isn't that awesome. He had 2 touchdowns, though, so that's where he made his hay. If he's going to do that again this week, he should be able to put up numbers, but that yards per carry number is quite troubling. All right, into our next tier here, the strong running backs 2s, getting kicked off with Miles Sanders, and I think is a juicy matchup in game script against a reeling Pittsburgh defense right now. They did clean it up and hold Miami to 0 points in the second half on Sunday Night Football, but early on, we're going to talk about Raheem Mostert in just a second here. He was blowing the doors off of this Steelers defense with some efficient running here, which is exactly the type of player that Miles Sanders is. They're very comparable in terms of their explosiveness on the blocks here. So first and foremost, the Eagles are 10.5-point favorites. That screams awesome game script and awesome potential to be used in a very effective manner. I love this situation. Miles Sanders is coming off of a bye here. He's been a really effective number 2 running back for this season. I'm liking this moving forward. Raheem Mostert, like we just said, taking on Detroit this week, the arguably worst defense in the entire National Football League. This is a team that rushing, receiving, it's all been a problem. They haven't been able to get off the field on third down, red zone defense. It has been a very shaky road for them. I root for this Lions team. I'm a fan of their culture and whatnot, but holy cow, are they just brutal in their defensive efforts at certain times in the game, too. They might put up 2.5 solid quarters and then totally just combust in the second half and break down. But for Mostert here, like I said, got off to such a hot start in Week 7. Loved what I saw from him. They're using him in the pass game as well. I think there's a good opportunity here that, they might be able to get out to a lead here, this being the Dolphins. They're, 3.5-point favorites on the road at Detroit, which is a little troubling in terms of that maybe actually coming to fruition at the end of the game. But overall, I think Miami controls the tempo and pace of this game. DeAndre Swift here. These next 2 players have some injury concerns attached and associated with them, so that's the first and foremost thing I'd like to address with both of these players. We don't know if Swift's playing out this week. Like, it could be Jamal Williams again. It could be DeAndre Swift. it could be, we'll probably see Craig Reynolds at some point or another just because Dan Campbell seems to love that guy, even though every Swift and Jamal Williams owner knows what I mean. It's the most annoying thing ever to see him on the field. But anyways, DeAndre Swift here is, in my opinion, a top 5 PPR fantasy running back when healthy and on the field. This week, though, you cannot expect him to be that. First game back off an injury. Look at almost any running back. Even JT last week had his role somewhat diminished in his first game from his ankle injury. So I would expect a lighter touch count here. If he does play, it's going to be more 13 to 24 expectations for DeAndre Swift as opposed to my top 12 expectations that I normally place upon him. And then Zeke Elliott, we had him as a must-start player for this week. Now he has a knee contusion that he suffered, and it sounded initially that it wasn't going to impact his playtime for this week's games. He continued playing in that contest, scored 2 touchdowns. Now, he misses practice on Wednesday, the day I'm recording this video. So, we'll have more information. You will have more information by the time you're watching this, so keep that accounted for here. But right now, not looking nearly as good as it did post-game when they were like, knee contusion shouldn't impact his availability for Week 8. That is now looking to be something that is untrue. So, keep your eye on Zeke moving forward. Let's dive into the second to last tier for today. All right, we're going with a bit of a thicker tier here for today's episode for this bubble running back 2's tier list. Now, Babino Benjamin here, he has been balling out. You look at last week against the Saints, and now he's coming off of an extended week. He really earned himself some touches. Now, the reason that I can't put him higher, despite the fact that I would really love to against Minnesota this week, is James Conner's health. If we learn that James Conner's not playing, this makes it very easy to, maybe if Zeke slips off here because of his injury, you slide Benjamin up and you know that he's going to be getting starting caliber opportunities in this offense. But just the simple fact of health being a factor here, and the games are on Sunday. We're recording this on Wednesday. We don't really know right now, so that's some kind of context here for this rankings evaluation of him. But just know I do like him as a player. I was impressed with what I saw last week. His efficiency was pretty nuts on the ground, and he did some damage in the pass game as well. So respect to Eno Benjamin there at the number 20 running back position for this week. 21, I've got Najee Harris. This is bust game written all over it. I've got to put him here because I feel like name value alone and just knowing that if things somehow happen to go right here, he could go in the top 20. But if not, I think that, to be honest, if you have other options, I would just feel very, very comfortable going in another direction here. Najee Harris plays Philadelphia this week with one of the best defensive lines in football. This doesn't have a big impact on the ground game, but the Eagles, just like 5 minutes ago, traded for Robert Quinn. That pass rush is going to be hellacious, and it is going to eat people alive. And unfortunately, if that means Kenny Pickett is getting wiped off the face of the earth, and by the way, Robert Quinn will probably play this week because all you got to say is Robert, rush the edge and hold this gap and either keep contained, don't keep contained, whatever the DC tells him, it isn't too complex to be an edge rusher in certain packages and situations. So if Kenny Pickett's out there just getting eaten alive and these guys are getting killed, they're already 10.5-point dogs at Philadelphia, this could get a whole lot worse. And this game script could get out of hand in 2 quarters. You could see Najee Harris, unless he scores a touchdown, having a just god-awful day. And I think that it's really a risk here, if we're being honest, to completely blow up your lineups for this week. David Montgomery taking on Dallas here. I love David Montgomery. I think he's capable of being a workhorse running back in this league. I think he has been a workhorse running back to this point in his career for quite some time. I believe this is year 4 for him. Yes, it is. He is in the Josh Jacobs class and the Miles Sanders class, 2019. So the thing I don't like here, though, is that last week, 26 rushing attempts went to other players, those 2 players being Khalil Herbert and Justin Fields. So you're competing now, like legitimately. You're still a starting running back, the most valuable lead tailback for this team, playing against the Dallas defense, though, on fire right now. They're running and swarming to the football. They are fast. They are doing everything at a high level. They held their opponents. The Lions, 24-6? Was that the final score? This is a very tough matchup here, and if you're not getting 20-plus opportunities and 100% of the goal line work, which I know Chicago came off of a big offensive game here, but is that really the norm? Is that what we're expecting going forward? I know some are. I don't know if I'm quite there yet. I would love to see it happen, though. I just like Justin Fields and would love to see Darnell Mooney finally get some opportunities, but for David Montgomery here, there's just too many things to worry about for me this week. I would avoid him if possible. I understand if that's not your case, though. Deontay Foreman here, I think he could be higher potentially by the end of the week or by the time games kick off here. However, We don't have 100% clarification on Chuba Hubbard's ankle sprain, so what we know is that he probably could play through it. We don't know if he will. I think if I was a Panther fan, that I would honestly just, you've got some nice young players here. Chuba Hubbard's a decent back. Maybe you just sit him for this week. If you win, though, you'll apparently be in first place in the conference, or not in the conference, in the division, though. So maybe you just want to toss all your guys out there and throw caution to the wind here and go all in. But Deontay Foreman, of course, if you saw 100%, or not 100%, but the majority of the shares of the backfield usage here would be higher ranked on this list for today. He was fantastic. He was the most efficient back of the group last week. And I think he has the best shot to score a touchdown in any given matchup. So I tend to lean his direction here again with his teammate being unhealthy in the backfield. That makes his ranking a bit more bullish from me. And I liked what I saw from him last week. Brian Robinson against Indianapolis. In his 2 starts, he has not been very efficient, under 4 yards per carry in each. He went 20 for 73 yards this past week. No receiving involvement, which is not always the best thing. I should rephrase that. Very limited receiving involvement here, which can work out for some players. If you're Nick Chubb, averaging an extremely efficient level of usage in the pass game, that can work out. But for Brian Robinson across his first 2 weeks, we know that's not his role here. Gibson and McKissick are more valuable in that phase of the game. What it comes down to for B-Rob is, did you score a touchdown or did you not? Maybe we can reassess later if his efficiency goes up a little bit, but until that happens, I'm keeping him down here in this territory. And then Tony Pollard here, a player that is a 9.5-point favorite at home this week, taking on the Bears. I just think that his efficiency, it happened again this week, 6.92 yards per carry. Like, he is clearly, and if Zeke ends up missing this game, this becomes very valuable for Tony Pollard owners to be a starter this week. But if he gets enough touches, he can really do anything, because he's got 100 scrimmage yards last week on, again, 6.92 yards per carry. Now, some of that includes receiving involvement as well, but he's explosive. He's dynamic. He can catch the football. They just got to use him properly, and it's easier said than done, especially for our fantasy expectations here. But I do think there is a lot of upside here. He does creep up here because of that knee contusion and that opportunity that maybe he gets a start here in Week 8. All right, 6 quick names to break down here before we head on out of today's episode. Remember, we've got our receivers tiers video up as well for you guys to check out when you're done with this one. That is in our Week 8 playlist on the channel. So Devin Singletary could actually have himself a really solid game here against the Packers. He had 21 touches the last time out in Week 6 against Kansas City. And this is a game where the Bills are double-digit favorites at home, or touchdown plus favorites, depending on potentially if the line moves before you watch this. But there's an opportunity here. I think Singletary could be heavily used again in this game. I would hope the Packers just try to limit big plays over the top, and that might mean more of that involvement. He had 17 rushes, 4 receptions in that game in Week 6. So a talented player, not necessarily a workhorse, though, doesn't always get the opportunities that you need to have consistent productivity usage here. Gus Bus Edwards, he would be higher, but he is banged up back-to-back practices pre-Thursday night with limitations due to a knee injury. So scored 2 touchdowns on 36% of his snap share in Week 7. Week 8, though, his availability might be in question here. I hope he plays. I think he'll play, but that definitely impacts the role that he may have for this team. Tyler Algier here, coming off of a season and career-high 62% snap share, scoring his first touchdown, 16 carries, 50 yards. Not super efficient. He is playing Carolina this week. It's just going to come down to, did he score a touchdown or did he not? That's the case for a lot of these players. They are touchdown or bust type options. Kareem Hunt, actually very dangerously close to literally falling off the list for me. There is more trade discussion than I initially anticipated. Personally, I felt, this is a guy on a second contract here. Who is going to want to pay a draft pick and the salary to acquire him mid-season? And it seems like the going rate, I saw a report, 4th-round pick would get it done for Kareem Hunt. So if someone wants to pay that rate, and if the Browns think they can gauge intrigue from teams to make that happen, then you're going to see Kareem Hunt maybe somewhere else in a week or so here. And that might be the case. And if that is the case, you could see something this week where the Browns, much like the Jags did last week, were very cautious and conservative with their use of him. The Browns are pretty... That isn't looking good in the win-loss column right now. I think they hope they can make a run at Deshaun Watson here. They're going to have to get their act together before Week 12 if that's going to be the case. And I think that with the season trending the direction it is right now, they would maybe rather move off of him for a pick as opposed to let him walk in free agency for nothing. So another interesting scenario at play there. Like I said, though, my main concern is a lack of use here in Week 8 if they think they're going to trade him, like the Jags kind of shut down J-Rob and didn't even give him a touch in last week's contest. And then Darrell Henderson here versus San Francisco. Look, I think he'll be the starting running back, the guy that gets the touches for this team. The circumstance and reality, though, is that this is a really tough matchup for the Rams. They always struggle against San Francisco. I do not care they're coming off of a bye. It could help, but I think that the physicality San Francisco plays with, they constantly, frequently, and relentlessly punch this team in the mouth. So it's a tough one here. I think that he's going to be inefficient. I think he needs a touchdown. I think he needs some hopeful pass-catching involvement here. I'm hopeful for what this can be, and especially long-term for lineups here, but this is not the week for me that I'm comfortable starting him. And then Chuba Hubbard, he'd be higher if he was healthy. That's really all I have to say about that. We talked about it. He is the starter, so if he does play, he should see some decent looks. But again, Foreman's the goal line back for me, and neither of these guys are super awesome at catching the football. So there you have it, our top 31 running back rankings and tiers here for Fantasy Football Week 8. If you guys enjoyed, click the subscribe button, click that like button as well, and check out our Week 8 playlist for more in-depth fantasy content and analysis. And remember, check out Ultra Game, our giveaway on the channel here. One of you guys can be rocking this sweet shirt or something very similar to it that they will ship directly to you. So all you got to do is follow the steps we outlined earlier in today's episode, and we'll get you guys squared away and hooked up with that stuff. So thank you so much, you guys. I appreciate you. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.